And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Kuehl Show here on 12-Ounce Sports. I am your host, as always, the insider of the insiders, Tyler Kuehl. Oh, guys, let me tell you what. It is great to finally be back. It has been a long road to get back to this point. Well, not a long road. It's been a whole, 14 days since we did our last, 14 days since we did our last show here on 12-Ounce Sports, 12 days since we did the now infamous truck cast with Alex, having him come back. Obviously, a different look here. The same ugly hair, the same ugly mug, but the same awesome t-shirts. We'll get to those in a minute here on the Kuehl Show. I'll explain why we took a little bit of a pause. For those that don't follow us on social media actively, now granted, we've been pretty quiet over the last couple weeks, but for good reason. But we are back and here on 12-Ounce Sports, so don't worry, kids. No need to panic. No need to call your grandma and tell her you're panicking because we're back on. No, it's okay. But we're here on 12-Ounce Sports, which means we're on the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Zingo TV, channel 761 on there. If you ever want to check it out, guys, channel 761, promo code 12-ounce. That's number 1, the number 2, the letter O, or letter Z, or Z for you improper English users. And, of course, why we're on 12-Ounce Sports? Well, we got to thank our awesome people for the reason why we're there, including mybookie.ag down there in the corner, guys. Baseball still going on. Not a whole lot of playoff action worth mentioning, but a lot of sports to bet on, golf included, racing. You can go on. I don't think you can bet on the Little League World Series. I know Canada here soon is going to be allowing people to vote on or bet on singular sporting events. So be sure to get on there, mybookie.ag, and win and get paid. Make sure you sign up for free as well, though. Don't spend money to sign up. Do it for free. 12-Ounce Sports is the promo code to get on there. And, of course, as always, up in the corner on my laptop, Second String Leather Company, guys. Hashtag crafted from the crease. Guys, they have so much cool stuff since last time we came out. Collection 9, it's a banger. Go out there. I just said the word banger. That's because coffee's about halfway done. We're not fully there yet. We'd use better words. But other than that, guys, check it out. SecondStringLeather.com. And also, you ready for this, guys? A new item coming out here. Putter covers. For all you golfers out there like yours truly. Need someone to protect that putter because we got to protect that 14 handicap. And do so by using the awesome leather equipment from SecondStringLeather.com. Hashtag crafted from the crease. We have us another busy show. We are not coming back limping into this show, guys. We are coming back with a bang, full speed ahead. In about 25 minutes and change time, Dan Rice from the Hockey Writers. We're going to be getting ready for the Women's World Championships coming up later this weekend, guys. It's going to be a huge tournament, a big tournament. Didn't have it last year, obviously. It's back this year in Calgary. U.S. is the favorite to win it again. Canada's good, but there are some other countries that are looking to really press the envelope and show that they are teams to be reckoned with this weekend. We'll talk with him as well. Also get some Devils talk with him as well. He's a New Jersey guy. He likes to talk about his team, the New Jersey Devils, who have made a splash this offseason with some big free agent signings, some big moves as well. That team is going to be a lot better in that Metropolitan Division this year. And later on, around 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central Time for you folks there in Minnesota, State of Hoppy making his return back here to the Kuehl Show. We'll be talking about the Wild, of course. Why not? And we'll also get his take on all things hockey. We'll probably get on the Seattle Kraken page a little bit as well. So, let's address the elephant in the room. No, there is no elephant in this room. And for those that follow us on Instagram and Twitter, I did a quick little show around of the studio in the office here of the new house that I live in now. My wife is out there right now. She is watching her show. She's actually watching a movie. Tom Hanks, Angels and Demons. That's what it was. She was watching one of those movies that it has Ewan McGregor, so it's okay, but it's not like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest movie ever. I mean, Ewan McGregor can only do so much, guys. Let's be honest. But we have been moving over the last 2 weeks, and it wasn't like one big move. We were doing moves throughout the week. That's why we didn't do a show 2 weeks ago nor last Monday. Simply because the fact that we moved in last Sunday, not yesterday, the Sunday prior, with a big move with all of our tables, couches, furniture, all that stuff. And, I said to myself, let's focus on getting settled in here because let's be honest, literally up until yesterday, this was not here. You would have seen a barren wall behind me right there. This wasn't even set up yet last Monday, the sound equipment and whatnot. And Yeah, we had Wi-Fi, but we hadn't really done any tests yet. So that would have been really stupid of us to try to put a show on for you today. So we're like, you know what? Let's just try this out. And, maybe one day we'll get a camera. We'll have someone hold the camera and show you guys around. There's some open spaces here. I hope it's not too echoey. I did some testing on it with the sound, and the cool diaphragm mic I got here kind of deafens it a little bit. So it's a little bit better, but it is echoey because hardwood floor, not hardwood, laminate flooring we got in here. So it does echo a little bit. I'm working on getting some stuff. I'm supposed to have a rug coming in here too to make it a little bit, now an actual rug, like, decorative rug. That'll dampen the sound a little bit. So if it does echo for now, I do apologize. We're still in the early stages of setting this whole kit and caboodle up. I do have a guest chair here because now I actually have a house and it's not like a sketchy place to go to, like an apartment complex. So I could have guests over if I wanted to now. And there's some cool people that live here in West Michigan that would like to come on, and I wouldn't be having have them sit next to me here, have a cup of Death Wish coffee, and have a fly buzzing around the room that I can't quite kill right now because I'm on the show. But have them sit in here and talk some hockey. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? We'll just have to see how it all works out. 'Cause got a lot of endeavors going on. Not as crazy, but different, I guess is the best way to describe it. Different endeavors going on right now. I'm doing high school football this year. Probably should have I don't know if you guys follow me personally on Facebook or Twitter, but I'm doing football, and to be honest with you, it's going to be interesting because I was a football fan. My wife and I were going to go to a Michigan game, University of Michigan game next month. So I always love college football, pro football, what have you. I'll be doing high school football this year, and it's going to be interesting to say the least because I like calling it. I like joking about calling it, but now I'm going to be put on the spot, and some guy is going to pay me probably way too much money. And, Peyton Turner just going on Twitter, tweeting at me because I made sure I showed The Office, and he said there's probably an hour behind the scenes footage on this thing, and I probably should tell him it took us about, it took us about a couple hours to get everything set up because Kelly really wanted to make sure that these were level. These are not just nailed into the wall, the banners. We actually have banner rods now. You can't see them on here on the screen on 12 Ounce Sports if you're listening on your favorite podcatcher, but there's actual professional bars holding these things up now. Since, we're actually living in this house, I'm like, let's make it actually look decent and kind of professional. Now, yes, Chris Osgood is put on with Scotch tape over there, that poster, and there are thumbtacks holding up the Michigan State banners that Kelly has, and I think that's it for the tacks, right? Oh, there's a tack holding up. I got a Leafs banner. Hold on, let's see if I can do this here. Can you guys won't be able to totally see it. There's a Leafs banner with all the logos. You can kind of see it in the corner. Now it's going to swing back and forth at me. It's right there on a thumbtack, so it's pretty neat. I got the TV still there. We're not running anything right now. We could be watching the Little League World Series, but first show with new Wi-Fi, we thought, Kelly's watching her stuff out there. Let's just make sure everything works without doing two televisions running, watching TV and streaming at the same time. Let's just have one person watch TV. I do the show here. However, this time, folks, I have the knock on wood advantage on the router because the router it's in the basement. It's on top of a vent, but it's okay though because the Xfinity guy said it was okay. It's right beneath the floor here, so it's closer to me than it is to her. So we're not going to be the ones that are having problems. It's going to be her. I won't tell her that though, as long as you guys don't tell her that either. So anyways, let's get into things here. So like I said, about 20 minutes time, we'll be talking with Dan Rice about the Women's Worlds, the NWHL. Oh God, Kelly is waving. Oh, did Kelly hear me? I don't think Kelly heard me. That's probably good. How much can you hear me right now? Not a lot. So you should go in the bedroom and close the door and see how loud I am, just to know if I ever need to do a show when you're sleeping. Because that'd be nice. That's actually a good test. Because now, because this room is not connected to our bedroom, which is really nice. So if I ever want to do a show and she's sleeping or, want some quiet time, I could still do a show. Now, granted, yes, I probably want some more soundproof. What? Oh, all right. I'll have to get some soundproof stuff. Anyways, like I said, Dan Rice coming on here talking women's hockey in a little bit and later on, second half of the show, before talking Miners with Rando tonight on 12 Ounce Sports. State of Hoppy coming on to talk hockey. Minnesota hockey. Maybe talk some Brew as well. Because they're the Soda Pod, him and Isha Droney, two awesome guys. They love bringing people on the show to talk about craft beer, good beer. And here in Grand Rapids, I don't know if it's still official, but for the longest time, we were known as Beer City, USA. We have a lot of good beer that comes out of here. So do they do in Minnesota as well. And Wisconsin is another great place for beer. There is a place like Muskoka Brewing up in, I think it's in Wisconsin. I get beers from odd places. Sometimes my parents, my dad and Colleen, they travel a lot. They come back with brews that I've never heard of, but it tastes really good. There's an awesome brewery up in Marquette that I can't think the name of. There's one up near the Sulaks. We'll probably get into some beer talk with them, if we have time here on TKS. But let's get to some news today. So obviously there have been more signings since the truck cast that we did. And for those that don't know, we did a truck cast. For those that only watch it on 12 Ounce Sports, we do have the truck cast on your favorite podcatcher. So if you're watching us on 12 Ounce Sports, jump on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google, Apple Podcast. I think we're on everything. Go on there, search us. It's the last show, the truck cast. That's where we pretty much react to the day. That was the first day of free agency, pretty much the first day of signings. Alex and I were driving a moving truck around. Sounds a little funny, but it gets our very entertaining takes, including us talking about Tony D'Angelo, which is a thing that I have to admit is actually for real. I still can't believe it. But anyways, a couple news of note. Some things we'll get to later on as well with Hoppy. But news from today, Kevin Fiala signing a 1-year contract with the Minnesota Wild. Just kind of going to show that Billy Guerin is realizing that this is going to be the year for the Wild. $5.1 million 1-year contract for Mr. Fiala. We're going to get Hoppy's take. Remember when we talked with Pat Micheletti last, this was shortly after the buyouts, and now we're kind of starting to see what the Wild are going to be coming into this 21-22 season. The other signing today, avoiding arbitration, Nashville Predators with their goaltender, UC Saros. Kind of a big deal here. 4 years, $5 million AAV per $20 million contract for the young netminder. Not a bad deal, I'll be honest with you. Now, granted, it's not Pecorini's old number, so I'm guessing you're okay with that. And UC Saros is a little bit of an unproven goaltender. He is the established number one guy there in Smashville, albeit. But in the cap that we are in now and where we're going to be, a $5 million starting goaltender is looking pretty fair, especially given the fact that you're going to have a younger goaltender that's not making a whole lot of money behind him. Not a bad move there by David Poile. Nashville, I know they're not going to be the same kind of contender as they have been in the past, but this will still be a good hockey team. No question about it. But certainly an interesting move there. I'm going to omit the teams that we're not going to mention. Arizona, Vegas was another one that didn't do a whole lot of moves. Calgary did a lot of small stuff. Of course, Vegas really can't because even though they traded Marc-Andre Fleury away, they still don't have a whole lot of cap space left. Buffalo did a lot of small signings. That was just about it. The Islanders as well didn't do a whole lot since day one of free agency, or the first couple of days of free agency. So with that, let's quick run down the list here. Let's start in Anaheim. We'll go down by division. Pacific Division will start off here. Anaheim, a little bit of a small contract here. A lot of these are going to be small. Probably only one player per team, just because, hey, we're short on time and there's been a lot over the past couple weeks. Maxime Comtois, former Team Canada member for the World Junior Hockey Championship team, the infamous 2019 game now. 2 years, $2.0375 million. Not a bad deal if you're asking me, kids. Simply because of the fact that he scored 15 goals last year. He's not a bad player. He's not going to be the superstar scorer that he was back in junior in Quebec, but he's going to be a good player. I think that's a good thing to keep Anaheim to keep him around. Edmonton got a big extension the weekend after our last show. Big move here, getting Darnell Nurse locked up for 8 years, $9.25 million. Oh man, we got to get Jack Michaels back on our show. We got to get his thoughts on this. Now, granted, I'm not saying Darnell Nurse is a bad defenseman, guys. I'm not saying he's not worth $9.25 million. But by year 6, 7, and 8, oh boy. Even if the cap starts to go up, how long do you think Darnell Nurse is going to be in his prime is the question. How long are the Edmonton Oilers going to be able to be competitive? Because this is still a hockey team, guys, that, similar to the Leafs, can't get out of the first round of anything. All right, I get it. They're a good team. They have the best player in the world. They're very skilled. I don't know if he can be good for long if the Oilers aren't good for long. If Edmonton turns it around next year, guys, and makes it to the conference finals, I'll shut my mouth, all right? But I'm just saying, Nurse is going to have a tough time, and the Oilers are going to have a tough time in the latter stages of that contract. Los Angeles, not a whole lot going over there. They have a pretty cut and dry team. Andreas, I mean, we talked about some of their big moves on day one. They're going to be a little bit better. They may be hanging around the wild card spot in the West because, like I said, the Pacific Division is all in the Pacific Division. Andreas Athanasiou, 1 year at $2.7 million. This is going to be probably his story for the end of his career. Having known the guy since he was a prospect for the Red Wings, always a talented skater, great hands. There's just something missing. He's able to come back and play every year in the NHL, be an everyday NHLer. It just seems like he was missing something that he didn't pick up in order to be a star in this league. He'll be a good player for the Kings, no question about it, though. San Jose, they solidify their goaltending a little bit here, getting a hold of Adin Hill from Arizona. Now, Arizona is the whole kit and caboodle and a half. I probably should have mentioned that because now they don't have Kemper nor Adin Hill, so they're two of their goaltenders they used last year gone. But San Jose gets a goaltender because remember, Martin Jones is no more. This was going to be an interesting looking team anyways. They do have James Reimer back there. So they have a couple of, do I want to use the word veteran for Adin Hill? I mean, he seems like he's been around for a long time, right? He's been around for a minute. But as of right now, it's just Reimer and Adin Hill. Adin Hill is only 25 years old. It's so weird. He's there now. They signed him to another extension. They traded him and they signed him. 2.175, like I said, for 2 years. So 4 and 4.25 for your two goaltenders. In today's economy, that's pretty good. I get it. Reimer's older. Hill's unproven, but San Jose is just going to be a thing. San Jose is going to be in that division. They're going to play some games. They may have some cool highlights. Erik Karlsson will do a couple of funny bits probably with his mustache, but that's about it. That's pretty much cut and dry how the San Jose Sharks are going to be looking this year. Seattle, they made some moves. They made some moves and some signings, guys. I'm not going full-scale playoff contender Pacific Division champs yet with this Seattle team, but you get Vince Dunn on your back end, 2x4, solidifies the defense. Marcus Johansson, 1 year by 1.5, not a bad signing. You get some depth up front. That's important. Hello, Vegas. You probably want some of that. Marcus Johansson, a guy that's had some playoff experience, deep playoff runs, had a couple of good years there with the Wild. I'm interested to see what he does now with the Kraken. But their big kahuna, their big fish, if you will, if I could say that. 6 years, $5.9 million per for one Philip Grubauer. This was an interesting move by Grubauer. We thought it was done deal. He was going to stay in Colorado. They had been fine. Apparently, the money was going to be too much for Joe Sakic and co., and that sent Grubauer to the Northwest now. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at a goaltending trio, possibly, there in Seattle. Not just Grubauer. Not just Chris Driedger. But you're looking at, I mean, those are your two guys, but you're looking at a really, really good setup there in the net. Like I said, Driedger and Grubauer are going to be your two goaltenders. They still have Joey Decord down there, who's listed in the minors according to Cap Friendly. But he's a guy that if something happens, someone gets hurt up top. Decord, we saw it with Ottawa. He shows glimpses that he can be a good goaltender. And on a team that, albeit improved Ottawa Senators, a team that struggled at times defensively. So they have a good 3 goaltender setup there that they can use in Seattle. I'm interested to see how Joey Decord does in the minor league system, how many games he gets in, if they're going to try to push him to play games. Because obviously Grubauer is going to be your number one guy. And Driedger shows that he can be an everyday NHLer in his own right. You may see a 1A, 1B setup, similar to what we saw when Grubauer was having his injury troubles a couple years back with Pavel Francouz there in Colorado. So, in good-looking setup for the Kraken on the back end as well. Like I mentioned, Vince Dunn signing there is also going to be a big move. Vancouver, a couple small signings. They got one today, though. Jason Dickinson, 3x2.65. And Travis Hamonic beefing up a little bit on the back end for the Canucks. They got the offense. They just need more on the back end. Central Division, Jake McCabe going to the Chicago Blackhawks, a guy that has always shown that he has potential to be a good defenseman. Unfortunately, he's played for the Sabres. McCabe, 4x4 with the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll touch on the Blackhawks a little bit later on here in today's show. Colorado, they didn't do a whole lot. They did sign a couple of depth pieces, Dylan Sekura and Darren Helm signing there. Darren Helm, longtime Red Wing, Mr. I'm under the knife because my knees don't work anymore. Darren Helm signing there. That's almost a move, right, guys? Where it's like, all right, we're going to lose Kadri at some point again in the playoffs, so we need some veteran centers that can play still. That's, of course, given that Darren Helm actually stays healthy, so we'll have to keep our eyes and ears on that. Dallas, not a whole lot coming from the Dallas camp. Obviously, they'll lose Jason Dickinson here, but Yoel Kiviranta signs for $2 million and a little over $1 million. Pretty quiet out of Dallas. I'm interested to see if they do some more here before the season starts. Like I said, though, last year's team, which did not have Ben Bishop, remember still. It was Ty Ottinger and Anton Hudobin in net. And now they have Brayden Hoppy in there in the mix. If Dallas can stay healthy, I think they're a competitive hockey club in that Central this year. They just got bummed out by two cases of COVID. Not cases, but like 2 parts where they had to pause their season because of COVID. They never really got to get a good stretch in. I remember I was talking with Bruce Levine there towards the end when I was at the World Championships with them. He said they had not practiced, I think, the last 2 months of the season. There were the morning skates, but that was it. There was like no legit practice for the Dallas Stars there down the stretch. So we'll see how they do there in a full 82-game season. Fingers crossed they stay healthy. Nashville, like I said, UC Saros, Dante Fabro as well, 2x2.4. St. Louis, kind of a bigger move, 5x4.5 million dollars going to Brandon Saad. First of all, can we all just question if Brandon Saad is worth $4.5 million still? Maybe it's just me being a pessimist, but I don't think Brandon Saad's that good anymore, guys. Listen, 2013 and 2015 were some good times there in Chicago, but guys, that was 6 years ago. Obama was still in office. Chicago's guy was still there in Washington, D.C. That's how long ago it was when Brandon Saad was a key contributor, a consistent key contributor to a hockey club. But St. Louis needs players, they need talent. Vladimir Tarasenko is seemingly on his way out, ? So we'll have to keep our eyes and ears on that. Winnipeg, Andrew Kopp and Riley Nash both getting signed there. Kopp, a 1 year, $3.64 million. He was an RFA. Riley Nash, depth added to the Winnipeg lineup. I like the way they're thinking. I still think Winnipeg, they can be a good team in the Central Division. I just think it's hard to judge, oh man, they were bad last year toward down the stretch, but then they actually won a playoff round, so they got to be good, right? Well, I don't know. The North Division was this anomaly. It was good hockey. Yes, the team from the North made it to the Stanley Cup final, but it was so odd and weird. Like, oh, Vancouver, Calgary would have got a playoff spot in the West Division. It may have. We don't know that. That's why last year was so fun and special, because you didn't know until it was the end of how good each division was. But then again, in the playoffs, not always the best team wins those games. That's why I think you can say the North was the best because they had a representative in the final. But I don't know. The best team in the division wasn't even that good in the postseason. They blew a 3-1 lead to the Montreal Canadiens, who got lucky because they ran a really good goaltender, Carey Price, some timely scoring, excellent play from Suzuki and Caulfield. I shouldn't say lucky with Carey Price, but they got a hot goaltender, good young scoring, and Shea Weber able to really cross-check everyone for the first 3 rounds, and then his knee started to fall off, and that was it for him. So that'll be interesting for Winnipeg to see how they go through. A couple more minutes here before we take a break, before we bring on Dan Rice. The Metropolitan Division, Derek Stepan, adding a little bit of depth to Carolina's roster, 1 year by $1.35 million. Columbus, Jake Bean, who they traded from Carolina, they signed him to an extension, 3 years by $2.333 million. And the big one, talking about Darnell Nurse, signing his big extension, Zach Werenski, 6 years by $9.583, repeating. Big money for the big blue liner there in Columbus. Now it's easy to get paid the big guy because the other big guy is going on to Chicago, Seth Jones, who signed a pretty big deal after he got moved there. So all the big defensemen in the league right now getting paid big bucks across the National Hockey League. We'll get to New Jersey in a little bit here, but Dougie Hamilton, of course, the big one, $7 by $9 million. Ryan Reeves gets traded to the Rangers. He signs on for a year at $1.75. Pittsburgh gets Zach Aston Reese for $1.725 for a year. And a couple goaltender signings. Ilya Samsonov signs for 1 year at $2 million. I don't know what the plan is with Samsonov with the cap, simply because of the fact that what it sounds like is after this past season, the management and Samsonov have had fits. A lot of it had to do with COVID issues, some with Kuznetsov, but he is still a good goaltender. They did get Vanacek back from the Kraken, so they have their goaltending duo back. Is this impress us or be gone kind of year for Samsonov. We'll have to wait and see. Philadelphia, though, they are making it clear that Carter Hart is the guy. If you haven't noticed it yet, kids, 3 years by $3.979 million. I think last year was a down year for the kid. I believe last year was his true sophomore year. Yes, technically that was his third season, but 19-20 was his first real year as a starter in the NHL. And I think now they settled in a little bit. There's going to be a little bit better of a blue line there in Philadelphia, a little bit tougher, a little bit younger, but I think the Flyers in the Metro are going to be a little bit better, and a lot of teams are going to have to watch out for them as well. Like I said, New Jersey is another team that people are going to have to be on the whereabouts. I think I can quick run through the Atlantic here before we go to break. Nick Foligno going to Boston, $3.8 million for 3 years. You know, it's a bummer how it didn't work out in Toronto. There was potential there. Injuries, that's what happened. He got hurt, couldn't really get into a good rhythm, and unfortunately, by the time the playoffs came around, he was not healthy at all, and that's kind of how it ended up there for Mr. Foligno. So I can see why he'd want to go to Boston, and maybe he'll get some more time there on a slightly less roster. Detroit, couple of small things. Tyler Bertuzzi, 2 years by $4.75 million. Jakub Vrana in the Wings avoid arbitration. He signs for 3 by $5.25 million. Florida gets some depth. Sam Reinhart, they re-sign him 3 years by $6.5 million. And Jumbo Joe Thornton going back to a sunny state. 1 year, $750K for the bearded man. His 1 year in Toronto was all for naught. Matthew Perreault going to Montreal for 1 year by $950K. Victor Mete, former Hab, going to Ottawa for $1.2 million for a year. Corey Perry signing up for 2 years at $1 million. And Andre Kasha going to the Leafs 1 year at $1.25 million. So a lot of players moving around within the division in the Atlantic. Andre Kasha, former Bruin. Corey Perry, Montreal to Tampa. Mete, Montreal to Ottawa. Perreault kind of went from Winnipeg in the north to Montreal, so I guess it works out that way. But a lot of movement, some big signings. We'll get to a little bit more with the New Jersey Devils here in a minute after we talk about the Women's World Championships here in a minute with Dan Rice from the Hockey Writers. Like I said, we'll talk Minnesota Wild later on with State of Hoppy. But we will take a quick break. When we come back, it will be Dan Rice from the Hockey Writers to discuss women's hockey, the World Championships, the NWHL, and more, whatever else comes up here on The Kuehl Show here on 12 Ounce Sports. We'll be back right after this. And welcome back to the Kuehl Show, everyone. Tyler Kuehl here, the Insider of the Insiders, for this returning episode, Monday, August the 16th. Guys, this coming weekend, a big tournament. A tournament that is a year and a half in the making. 2.5 if you consider the fact that it hasn't happened since 2019. The IIHF Women's World Hockey Championships coming up, guys. For those that don't remember the 2019 World Championships, well, I do. We had a whole hour and a half argument about it here on the show back in the spring of 2019 for how it ended. It was a great tournament, lovely tournament. Just how it ended was, I think, that was the wrong ending. I talked with Digit Murphy. She agreed with the same way. A lot of people think it was the wrong way, but the U.S. won, beating Finland in the gold medal game. Will they do it again, though, is the big question. But for that, we need to bring on someone who knows a thing or two about the women's game. He covers women's hockey for the Hockey Writers, also does awesome coverage for the National Women's Hockey League as well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, none other than Dan Rice. Dan, how are we doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Tyler. Thanks for having me on again. I have to ask, you mentioned Digit Murphy. How much talking were you able to do with her on? I know she likes to be a little chatty.
I got in. I think we did the count 25 words in the 45-minute interview that we did.
That sounds about right. Her press conferences after the games at Lake Placid were a good 20 to 25 minutes each, and a lot of the other teams, 5 to 10 minutes, they want to get in and out.
Uh,
But Digit likes to talk, and she often gives. She's a great quote, so she's a reporter's dream.
she was a hoot to talk about, and it's a bummer they weren't able to go all the way there at the Toronto Six, but boy, they had a good team, and I'm excited to see them next year. We'll talk about the end up here in just a little bit, but let's get to the big tournament that's coming up this weekend in Calgary, the Women's World Championships. This tournament, for those that don't know, and this thing called COVID kind of messed things up. It was supposed to be in Halifax, Nova Scotia in the spring of 2020. Obviously, it didn't happen. It gets moved then to 2021. And about a month before, they decide it's not going to work out. So they move it then to Calgary here in August. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, Dan, because it sucks because, yes, because there's a lot of people that are angry, and deservedly so, that it was the Women's Worlds that was canceled. The Men's Worlds was in 2020 as well, but a lot of people are bummed that they weren't able to get it done in Nova Scotia because Hockey Canada really wanted to be there because it had been there in the past, but now they're moving to Calgary. Do you think that just this wear and tear of if and when it's going to get played is starting to wear on people going into this weekend?
I think it's more of a case of let's just get this over with finally. All jokes aside, it's a pretty important tournament, I think, because coming up next year is the Olympics. This is what a lot of what all of these players really train and dedicate their lives for. And they haven't had chances to showcase themselves or get ready for the Olympic Games the last couple of years, unless they were playing, their club games or their league games, and they lost a lot of time. So it'll be interesting to see how every team reacts. It's groups that haven't really been together too long in some cases, so it'll be interesting to see that blend of newer players trying to make a name for themselves and the older players just trying to reestablish themselves, because they don't get as many chances as NHL players, right, to play a full season,
right,
and kind of be ready for these kind of tournaments. They have to pick and choose their spots. You mentioned the Dream Gap Tour. That helps a lot of these players to get ready for these, but those games are nothing compared to, or not nearly as, at least in my mind, as competitive and as hard fought as these World Championship games and the Olympic Games will be coming up next year.
Yeah, because for the longest time, Dan, and this is, me just being the naive kid that I was, for a lot of us, it was the only time we ever watched women's hockey was the Olympics. That's the only time it was ever on NBC or whenever its family networks it was on, because even during the World Championships, there wasn't a whole lot of exposure for this. But now, 2019, I think, may have been the biggest, if you ask me, in terms of coverage. NHL Network did a lot for it, and of course, TSN up in Canada loves to do anything Hockey Canada. And I'm feeling like maybe it's because it is in Canada this year, it's in the Western Hemisphere, but this tournament in particular just feels like it's bigger. Whether it's because it's been a year and a half than it was supposed to be played, or whether it's because of all the big rise that was peaking at 2019 for women's hockey going into the 2020 season. I just feel like this could be the biggest World Championships, even though there may not be a single person in that building up in Calgary. This seems like a lot of eyes are going to be on this particular tournament. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. That's very well said. All those points that you made are very valid. The fact that the fans aren't going to be there, that's a real bummer. But the fact that they're going to be able to play this finally. And I think one of the big things that you did allude to there is being in our hemisphere. You're going to get so many more eyes on it than if it was during a normal time. Normal time they would have been playing April in a regular NHL season. The playoffs are just starting, right? So you don't have as many eyes that can can really focus in on you. And this tournament at this particular time of the year, there's nothing else really going on unless you're a diehard baseball fan, or at least in this hemisphere, this neck of the woods, unless you're a diehard college football fan getting ready for the season. There's not much that's going to be on to take your eyes away from that. So I would say that any hockey fans out there, if you've never watched the women's game, this might be a good chance to do that and see if it's for you, see if it's something you would be interested in. If you like hockey, I think you would like it. And I think it also helps that the U.S. just won they won their first Olympic gold medal at the previous Olympics. So you're still kind of building off of that momentum. A lot of those players are still on the team. Obviously, the Lamoureux twins aren't there, but they have a lot of really good, recognizable, well-known players that a lot of people probably know the names of, but maybe haven't really seen play a game. So this would be a good opportunity for those folks.
Yeah, because the exposure this year, similar to, like I said, 2019, the NHL Network is going to be broadcasting here in the States. In Canada, of course, TSN is going to be happening, which means that the NHL Network is really just going to grab the TSN games and broadcast it. But that's okay. We get to watch it. That's all that matters. Yep. But I'm really excited because this is a year, and we talked about how in 2018 it was the first in 20 years for the U.S. to win an Olympic gold medal. But the U.S., Dan, for the last... Gosh, they're going for their fifth right now, or they've won it 5 straight. They're going for a 6th straight world championship. This dominance of the American women's hockey program is so similar to the 1990 until Nagano in 98 of the Canadian women's national team, how they would just beat everybody. It wasn't really much of a competition. It was more or less just a crowning achievement once a year. Now it's looking like, all right, now Canada's the underdog, even though they have the home ice, because this American team, Dan, with all this talent, both goaltending, defense, skaters, coaches, whatever, they have it from top to bottom, an excellent team coming to Calgary once again.
Yeah, 100%. I would just say, I'm not really, not really. I shouldn't say not really. I'm definitely not a superstitious person or somebody that believes in those kind of things. But it's something weird happens when a Canadian national team plays on home soil. Things seem to tend to go their ways. I'm not saying that there's any reason for that. There's nothing nefarious going on. I don't want it to come off like that, but it's just the way that things work out. And for Canada, they haven't won a gold at this tournament, or they haven't won a trophy at this tournament in 9 years. So maybe this is the year that they finally break through, and maybe they catch the Americans a little off guard. They did lose one of their goalies leading up to this, Maddie Rooney, who was the hero in the last Olympics. She won't be participating, so that's kind of an interesting twist as we get closer to these games. And I think Canada and U.S. obviously is going to be the two teams to beat, but there's a few other teams in there that I think could cause some havoc and maybe catch some teams off guard in the early going of these the opening games of this tournament.
And we'll get to those teams here in just a minute. One team that I don't think anyone's really picking to finish in the top 4 or top 8 for that matter, that may be getting in there. But the U.S., I look at their roster here, and the big names are there, of course. Kendall Coyne-Schofield, Hillary Knight, Brianna Decker. But the one that I like to look for, I think, and this is why the Dream Gap Tour was such a big deal, because there were some names that, obviously, Kendall Coynes were there, and the Knights and all of them, the big names were there because part of the PWHPA. But one player that stood out to me the most, now granted, yes, there were more Dream Gap Tour tournaments in the States than were Canada, but that's neither here nor there. But Abby Rock really caught my eye, Dan, and she's going to be, do you think she's going to be a big player for this team?
Yeah. She's that next wave, that next generation of player that's coming up behind the Knights and the Deckers and the Kessels, the players that you mentioned. She's just a phenomenal player, and I think we probably see her get a lot of ice time, at least to start this tournament as they work through how they want to send their lines out here as things get underway. She's definitely going to be an X factor, and another player that I've always liked I feel like she kind of gets often overlooked, and I should know this, but I'm pretty sure she didn't get picked to play in the last Olympics. Alex Carpenter,
Right.
for me, she has always been like that game-changing player. We saw her only one season in NWHL with Boston Pride, and I think if I'm remembering right, she was a point of game player, and she's just a threat every time she's on the ice, and I think she could be that kind of X factor player too in this tournament, where maybe the other opponents will focus on stopping the night. Decker and Kessel and Kendall Coyne, Schofield, and those type of players, and then that's when Alex Carpenter is sitting in the perfect spot on the ice to bury a shot. So it's definitely going to be a great tournament coming up, and U.S. Canada is going to be a battle, and I think we all know that every time they play.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be terrifying to watch because here's the thing. Like we said, it's been a long time since Canada has done well in this tournament, and it's so hard because you look at this Canadian team, and if you went probably 5 years ago, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Melody Daou, this team is so deep is the Canadians, and Natalie Spooner, Renata Fast, Brianne Jenner there. Anne-Renee Desbiens, who has become a real big key part and a big goaltender for the Canadians. This team has the talent, but it's like this, and you mentioned being on home ice helps. The Lucky Looney, goes back to Salt Lake back in 2002. The Lucky Looney always seems to be around there, but I don't know what it is, but it just seems like it's going to be tough for the Canadians to overcome this mountain, dare I say, that is the American power.
Yeah, and their biggest thing is going to be their defense is very young for this tournament, and I think that's where maybe the American team can expose them a little bit. They don't have a lot of the returning players. They have a bunch making their national team debuts, but I think they can go toe to toe offensively with the United States. All the players you mentioned, Natalie Spooner. Sometimes she's on the second or third line. She's a phenomenal talent. Another player I really like, Victoria Bach. She had a great collegiate career and has just been like dynamite with those Canadian national teams. So, it'll definitely be a challenge. They have to have a lot of things play out the right way for them. And that whole group that they're in is at least for the round robin play is pretty stacked. So all of those games should be pretty interesting, and it'll be interesting to see which teams come out on top in that grouping.
Yeah, the Group A certainly is the group of death in this tournament. You have Group B, which does have some tough teams. You have the Czechs and the Germans who are looking pretty solid. Japan always seems to be an interesting team. Hungary's in there as well. Of course, like I said, the Danes and the Germans. But Group A is the group of death. You have the U.S. and Canada. And that game, I forgot to write it down when that game is. I think it's the last one of pool play, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is the 26th. So 10 days from now, there up in Calgary will be the last game of pool play, of course, highlighted, of course, right? Have the two teams beat the heck out of each other before they go into the knockout stage, why don't they?
Yeah.
But the other,
I'm sure that game will be important for seeding too.
Most likely, yeah. I mean, and that's I say this and you say you're right, it is for seeding, but not necessarily 1-2. 1999 World Championship, you're right, maybe 1-2 here, but
right. It's a little different now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is the Russian Olympic Committee. They are going by the ROC moniker in this tournament, but you also have the Swiss, who have a couple good players, and the defending silver medalists in Finland. Now, the one thing that Finland kind of has going against them, we'll get to their positive side here in a second, they don't have their starting goaltender, Dan. This is why it's going to be really interesting to watch this tournament, because Nora Ratti, not there. Work obligations have inhibited her from playing in this tournament. Now, yes, they have a couple good goaltenders back there. They have Annie Kaisala, who was on the Kaisala, who was in the world's roster in 2017, and Miri Räisänen, who was on the roster in 2018, didn't play though. In 2018 Olympics, that means. But still, when you lose your number one goaltender, dare I say, make this comparison, Dan, it's like if the Habs tried to go into the playoffs without Carey Price. I don't think the Habs make it out of that first round against Toronto. Do I say the similar result if it were here now for Finland in this group?
I think the Finns will be okay. I think they have enough experience in other areas where they can maybe shut things down a little bit more. That they also know they don't have their starter. So they may try and tighten things up just a little bit. I've seen Miri Risanen play in person a few times. The year she was here at the Connecticut Whale, really big goaltender, takes up a lot of the net. Really long legs, athletic. Unfortunately, she got injured at the end of the season here, but phenomenal goaltender. So I think they can probably count on relying on both of those two goaltenders, and as you mentioned, it is really a pretty tough group, but I could see them finishing, anywhere from second, third, fourth. Like I don't think that would be out of the realm of possibilities. Just because I think they're a much stronger team than some of the other teams out there.
Yeah, that's going to be the bummer in this group because we're only going to take the top 4 in each group. That means one from this group has to be on the outside looking in. I don't think that's going to be a knock on any of these 5 teams and how tough this one is. The other team to watch out for, obviously the Russians are going to be a competitive hockey club, but the Swiss. The Swiss seem like they have just a couple of right pieces that could really push this team into the quarterfinals, particularly Lars Salder and Alina Mueller are going to be up front there leading the offensive attack. They could really turn some heads in this pool play.
Yeah, and anybody who's listening who's never seen Alina Mueller play, I would say she is must-see TV. She is a do-it-all player, really fun to watch. Just a phenomenal talent, and I got to, as we talked a little bit off air, I covered her brother Mirko Mueller for a little while when he was with the New Jersey Devils, and she is worlds better than he is. And that's not a knock on him. She is that good. She is very easily the best Swiss player, female hockey player right now, and she's kind of carrying that mantle now. And they're gonna I think it comes down to the Swiss and the Russian team fighting for that last spot out of that group.
It's going to be fun to watch, no matter what. I mean, there will be some games that are a little one-sided, but that's how it is with all world tournaments. Any international tournament. I went to go down to the U18s, and Canada beat Sweden. I think it was like 12-1 or something ridiculous. Like, those games happen. So don't be like, oh my goodness, Tyler, Tyler, what are you guys talking about? Canada just beat the Russians 10-0. Well, that happens. Look at a world championship. I mean, or world championships, juniors, that happens all the time.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, but that's what makes it interesting, right? You don't know what's going to happen. Did I think that Canada was going to blow out Sweden that night in front of Steve Yzerman and every single GM that was there? No, but dang it happened, and it caused for a very interesting broadcast. But I look at this tournament, and I see in everyone, maybe it's North American bias from us, and everyone's like, U.S., Canada, U.S., Canada, U.S., Canada. But you're got to expect Finland to be in there. And like I said, there's going to be someone from Group B that's going to catch everyone by surprise. Could be the Czechs. Who knows? But who do you think is the team that not many people are talking about that could jump into not necessarily winning a medal, but could get to those semifinal games and show that, hey, we may not win the gold, we may not be in the final, but we're a country that can be kind of looked at and kind of be thought after as a little bit higher regard, as the years go on here.
Yeah, I have to say I think that team is the Czech team. I'm assuming that they're going to easily win that group. Then that's not a knock on the other teams. I just think the Czechs are just that much better. And for me, I know at least 4 of the players on that team. I've seen them play in the NWHL, and they're all great game-changing kind of players. So they definitely have some top-level talent. And in that group, they're Japan. Hungary is going to be a team that'll probably give them a little bit of an issue, and as well as the Germans. Hungary has a couple of really good players too. I believe 2 of them were just drafted into the NWHL, and they just had an international draft, which was a 1-round only 6-player deal. But 2 of their players from the national team were drafted in that draft. So that speaks to the level of upcoming talent that they have. And a good friend of mine, Haley Williams, who played in the NWHL and is now playing over in Hungary. Actually, she's told me that there's a lot of good young and up and coming players over there. So I'm curious to see how they do in this group, and they're a team that I kind of expect to make it through that at least to the knockout stage. But I think the Czechs, in answer to your original question, the Czechs are that team that I think can be a little bit of a dark horse here.
Yeah, they're going to have a really good defense, and obviously Katerina Mrazova will be
Yes.
a big one to watch up front. You mentioned the two players that were drafted from Hungary in the NWHL International Draft. I'm going to mess these up. Fani Gasparic
Very good.
from
Yep.
Hungary, forward. She was drafted by the Minnesota Whitecaps, and the Toronto Six drafted Reka Dabasi from Hungary. Yes, I'm starting to figure out these international names a little bit. Go me.
It's all right. It takes a little while. As long as you try and give the good effort, that's all we ask.
I learned when I did the U18s, and because we in our pool we had Sweden's not too bad, but there's Sweden, Canada, those are easy ones. But we had Belarus and Latvia, and there were a couple that. And it's funny, Bruce Levine of the Dallas Stars, we did the games together, and we don't like to check Twitter, but we had to because we wanted to learn the names, because there were some people that were very unhappy that we messed up some of their players' names, and we respectfully fixed it. But yeah, people let you know.
That's something too that I think going forward we have to do better at, whether it's broadcasters, reporters. We have to do a little bit better at giving pronunciation guides, because for a lot of years I think we've butchered and Americanized a lot of names, and I think it's time to be a little bit more respectful and try and do things the right way. I know we try and do that with NWHL, where we us reporters, we try and fight the good fight. We try and get those pronunciation guides, especially for our broadcasters, because it is important. You want somebody to feel comfortable and at home, and know that you're not just giving up on somebody's name and it has too many letters. I don't want to. I'm just gonna make some sounds up and move on to the next person, or And when you're doing play-by-play, obviously it's a fast-moving sport, so you have to really be on your game in that aspect. Yeah, you did really good on those names. So give yourself a little pat on the back for me, all right?
Oh, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. And it is interesting. I mean, we did get some, but sometimes a little bit tough. But like you mentioned, the women's game, just doing club women's hockey here in the Midwest. Whenever I talk to coaches and I'm asking them for like pronunciation guides and stories, whatever, they're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing so much work? I'm not used to this sort of thing. I'm used to just going to the rink, coaching a couple hours and going home, asking and answering questions. I mean, I wasn't ready for this, but that's just how the game has evolved over the last 20 years, I guess. And I know it's so far ago as the 98 games. And I know in the last 3 or 4 years, the women's game has made so many big strides. But now the NWHL goes into this season. Dan, obviously we're going to be watching. It's going to be going head to head with the NHL like it is, but that's part of the hockey season. I'm going to be watching. I know you will as well. Why should people be excited for the first full season of the NWHL in 2 years?
I think there's a lot of reasons. Geez, we actually we don't have all the rosters yet. Minnesota hasn't even announced one single player, but
it's called gamesmanship.
Yeah, their group is they've largely been the same group over the years, and I think we all expect a lot of those familiar names will be back again. But yeah, this season is going to be pretty exciting. I like that. In the past, they would have maybe Boston would play a game on a Saturday night at home, and then Sunday afternoon in Connecticut or something like that. And the back-to-back games aspect is fine, but the travel aspect, you want to try and really minimize that. And I think the league did a good job with that this year, where each team is going to do kind of like baseball, where it's a 2-game series, or like college hockey, where they do 2-game series over the weekend.
Yeah.
So you'll have Connecticut comes to New Jersey to play the Riveters, and they play Saturday, early Saturday afternoon, and then early Sunday afternoon. When the Riveters go to Toronto, they're going to play Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday afternoon. So I think those will really help to bring the fans back, into and a lot of teams too. And I broke this down in my one of my recent weekly roundups on the Hockey Writers. A lot of teams have these extended homestands. Now there might be weeks off in between, but a team like Buffalo plays 4 games in a row. 4 games in a row at home, 2 weekends in a row. And then they have a road game, and then they have another 5-game homestand. So you're kind of building up that fan base, and the home teams at NWHL games, for those who have never gone, the home teams will sign autographs, take pictures with fans for anywhere from 30 minutes to up to an hour and a half after games. And that's the kind of access that you don't get in a lot of other sports. And you get to really touch that younger generation of fan base. So to really that's going to be your foundation going forward. You're giving especially young girls heroes and athletes to look up to and to be a role model. Somebody that they want to pattern their self after. As a writer, oftentimes I was in the past I'd be trying to file game recaps after games and would sit in the lobby and try and type something out. And as I'm doing that, I kind of am typing and looking at the screen with one eye, and my other eye was always kind of watching that autograph line, because there was always a lot of really cool personal moments that the players got to share with fans. And I've seen fans give them, gifts and stuff like that. And I know up in Buffalo, they had a really great woman who was a fan of the team. She passed away recently, and she just really took a liking to the team and especially the players. And she would bring them snacks before they went on their road trip. Like little
awesome.
bags of gummy bears or healthy food, like those kind of stuff. And granola bars, I think is the word I was trying to look for. But she would do all these really nice things and go out of her way. And unfortunately, the Buttes found out she passed away right before the Lake Placid games, or maybe it was after that first game. I can't recall, but they did something really nice where they're going to have the captain of the team kind of like pick a player to win like this award named after this woman that passed away. That was such a diehard fan, and I thought that was really a really classy move. And I know that the one player, Taylor Kersey, that she's the captain of the Buttes. She was somebody that was really close with this woman, and I know it affected her a lot. And I'm really happy to be a part of a group of people that do things like that really kind of look out for each other in their community. And that's the one thing about the NWHL, as I mentioned. Like you're not going to get that kind of that access or those egos that you sometimes come across as well with other professional sports.
We're not dropping names or anything, but there's been those people that just don't like to to go with fans. And I it's funny you mentioned that, and I unfortunately living in West Michigan, it sucks because the closest team I think we have is Toronto. And it's 6 hours away. It's okay, but I mean, right now it sucks because I can't really go. I can go to Canada. I can't come back from Canada.
Right.
Don't need to get into that whole story and that whole shtick. But I see the videos all the time, like because they do typically play in smaller rinks and public rinks to the NWHL, and of course for those that remember the CWHL as well. And you'll just see players walking out of the locker room, and there's be like a 4-year-old girl sitting there just kind of watching him to walk out. And she just gets all excited because, hey, you're seeing, women play hockey. Like, it's really cool. And all the players come over and give her high fives. And she comes back all smiling, rosy cheeks. And I'm like, and that girl's going to be on Team USA in 2033 or something like that. It's those things that inspire people to stay with a sport or stay with a game and want to do it because they want to do that later on down the line in their life. That's what helps grow the game. Why us guys keep playing hockey, I don't know. We never get any good stuff from the guys that play hockey these days, unless you find them in the summertime. But those interactions during the game, like they're coming out for the second period and they're just going over and high-fiving this 4 or 5-year-old, and that's what makes women's hockey so special. And that's why during the Lake Placid games, the Twitch streams were just amazing to be a part of. And I know we mentioned this the last time we had Yandan. It was so much fun to be in those chat rooms because it wasn't hockey Twitter. This was women's hockey conversation, and it was just fun. People that, some people that watch hockey, love hockey, that were maybe pessimistic, they loved watching it. People that had never watched hockey before were watching this and they thought this was cool. It was so unique, and that's what makes women's hockey special.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal. I think the NWHL really hit a gold mine with that partnership with Twitch and the chat room as the game is going on, where people can learn about the game, learn about the players, and do it in a friendly, somewhat safe atmosphere, because you're always going to have a couple of knuckleheads. But I think back to when I was a kid, and I never really had those opportunities to see athletes up close, right?
Right.
And now you see it a little bit more. Probably, I'm an older guy, but I see it a lot more now. I think with and in male sports too. Like you see the relief pitcher having a catch with a kid in the stands during a game, right? Like that's a moment that kid is always going to remember for the rest of his life, and it might inspire him to become a baseball player or somehow involved in the game. To see, as you mentioned, the kids getting fist bumps as the players are walking to the rink. I was very fortunate where the Riveters played at the Devils practice rink for 3 years or 3 seasons. And to get to the rink, they had to walk through the crowd. And it was always really neat to see the fans kind of like part the Red Seas as the players walk by. And like you mentioned, a little girl gets a fist bump and she turns around to her mom like, "Oh my God, can you believe that just happened?" Like, and she might not even know who that player is at that point, but it didn't matter. It touched her in a way that that really, I just, I think it just creates a fan for life. And in a similar situation, if I could tell, I'll try and make this as brief as possible.
Take your time, Dan. You're good.
That same kind of situation kind of unfolded where it was Boston was in New Jersey to play a game, and Boston's captain Jillian Dempsey, always the last one off the ice, hardest worker on the ice, always working on her shot, her edges, all that. And as she's finishing up her pregame routine, there's a little girl who happened to be at her first game that we found out later on. She was, kind of against the glass with her hands just pressed up, and Jillian skated over and kind of like waved to her, and she waved back. And the little girl was like, "Oh my God, like somebody that's, on the other side of this glass is waving at me." So Demps comes off the ice, and she made sure to bring a puck with her, and she gave it to the little girl. She made it a point to come around past her locker room to come over to where this little girl was and give her a puck. And her dad took a picture with Dempsey holding her. So this little girl was like, fan for life now. Another, I think 2 years go by, and she came to another game in New Jersey. And now she's obviously a couple of years older. I think she maybe was 4 at the first game. Now she's maybe 6. Hopefully I'm getting that right. I'm not good with kids' ages, but
older. They were older. That's all we know.
Yeah. So she comes to the game, and her dad brings her down by the locker room as the game ends, and the players are streaming out of the locker room after they take their showers. They get into their coats and whatever to get on the bus to go back to the hotel. And this little girl is there with hockey cards of herself that she started signing for each player that was coming out. And it was like the most adorable thing. I know a bunch of the players said, they took it home, they put it on their refrigerator, those kind of things. So it kind of goes both ways where, the players are making the fans' day when they give them that little fist bump or something like that. But when they kind of get that love and appreciation back, that means the world to them. That's worth more than any paycheck that they'll ever make for doing anything. And I wanted to mention the little girl's name, and I don't remember it. Her dad is Joe, and he follows me on Twitter, and I was able to thank him for or show him some of the pictures that I took of that second encounter. And it was those are priceless moments. Like, those are things that, like, even I'm gonna always kind of remember that, like as a really a heartfelt moment, and I see it so often with, especially with these players, how much they go out of their way to really make the younger generation feel included and feel like that this is something that they can attain to do and be.
It's so unique, and that's why I think, like I said, it goes both ways. You know, the older players are trying to make it fun for the fans and inspire them to be the next generation. But in the same token, you see that, you know, little girl giving out, you know, hockey cards of her to these players, and that just shows the current players like, hey, we're playing for something more here, and that's what's really
Yeah,
cool. And I mean, that's another thing too. Jillian Dempsey, get ready for a hockey game, big game coming up here. I'm gonna hold a 4-year-old for a minute.
yeah,
Sorry, Austin Matthews. I don't see Austin Matthews coming over and saying hello to an. Now, granted, I'm pretty sure if Austin Matthews went to the crowd at 19,000 seat Scotiabank Arena, I'm pretty sure there'd be a mob scene. But
right, right.
but hey, that is the goal. The goal is when Jillian Dempsey goes out to say hi to a girl, that 30,000 people come streaming down from the top of the rafters at the TD Garden to go say hi, because that is what it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, right, Dan? Like
Yeah,
someday, I can't say it's gonna happen in 2022 or the next presidential election, but it just feels like it's going to happen in some capacity at some point.
yeah, and I don't think, I think um, with some of the players that play in the Dream Gap Tour, I think their goal is to play in those grand NHL buildings one day. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's their ultimate end goal, I think, and they want that. I don't know if they want the NHL's money, but they want, some kind of backing, somebody to support them. And I don't know if that's the right way to go. I don't know if it is or it isn't. I think what they should maybe be, uh, aiming for is not skipping steps. And I don't know if I'm going to explain this the right way, but maybe aim for trying to fill up an AHL building. Those buildings hold at least around here, the ones that I've been to, maybe 5,000 to 8,000 people.
Yeah, junior
If you
ranks in Canada. Yeah, those kind of. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if you can fill one of them, then okay. Now we have like kind of a starting point. But they want to go from, some of the NWHL teams, they play in practice rinks of NHL teams. The Riveters are going to be returning to Newark this year for 8 of their 10 home games. That place holds maybe 300 to 500 people, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's not like an assigned seating kind of thing. It's kind of bleacher style seating.
Right.
The rink in Boston where the Pride play is shared by the Boston Bruins. That's their practice facility. So that one's, you only have seats on one side of the ice. There's no seats on the other side. So that's taking away, seating and options and stuff like that. Minnesota, same thing. They play in the Wilds practice facility. So these are good buildings for them to kind of be in now. But I think the next step should be that maybe move up to those AHL junior style rinks, and then maybe try and take that next step. But I think sometimes everybody wants to go from point A to point Z, and you kind of have to go along the steps to get there. And yeah, of course, we want them playing in front of sold out buildings, being on some TV channel somewhere where it's not on a laptop or on your phone. But you have to kind of build it up to get there. We can't just snap our fingers and make it happen. I told Danny Ryland, who used to be the commissioner, I told her in one of the last times we conversed, I said, I was obviously really sorry to see her go, because I really have enjoyed and I feel re-energized with my writing since I started covering women's hockey and particularly the NWHL. And I told her, if I can get like a great paying job covering the NWHL, I would give up covering the NHL in a heartbeat. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think twice about it, because I've had so much fun and I've met so many great people through the NWHL. And I would just, it's just become something that I'm very passionate about. And, 10 years ago, I would have told you were crazy if you would have told me I was going to say this to you, but that's kind of how the world works sometimes, right? You don't know what you're going to be interested in 5-10 years down the road. And now I can't really, like if I cease to to cover the NWHL, I would kind of be like broken up. Like I wouldn't know what to do with myself. But it's been really cool to be a part of something, building from the ground up. Now I wasn't there from day one. I was there from, like 2 weeks after day one, we'll say. But I like to consider myself being there from the beginning, and I've seen enough games in person. I've traveled all over the place to see them play, and I wouldn't do anything differently. Like I have zero regrets about anything that I've done involving that league, and doing what I can to promote it, make it bigger, make more people aware of it, whether it's through my writing or if it's buying a Connecticut Whale shirt and wearing it to the store or to the concert or to a movie and or to a bar and somebody asks you about it, and then it becomes a conversation piece, a conversation starter, and maybe that person becomes interested. Maybe they don't, but if I'm not wearing the shirt, we don't have that conversation, and you never know. So so whatever I could do to help them, I definitely would do, and I think eventually women's hockey will get to that point, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight, and I do hope. Gosh, I hope it happens in my lifetime. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm old, but I'm not that old. So I feel like I got a couple of really good decades left in me here, and I'd like to see things progress in the way that I think they should.
Me too. I mean, I wear my Toronto Six shirt sometimes into the studio. Now, granted, once again, I have to emphasize that I am in Michigan. I'm a Toronto Six fan and a Toronto sports fan, so I get my crap when I wear my Leafs or my Jays stuff, whatever. But I wear the Toronto Six shirt, and literally no clue. Like usually, some people would joke. I'm like, "Hey, isn't that the Ottawa Senators?" Because they're the similar colors.
Right,
And I'm like, I made those jokes. I'm like, yeah, no, Toronto Six, whatever. But then some people are like, "What?" Women's like I work in there is a sports station in the studio that I work at, but even then the guys are like, there's a women's professional hockey league, and I'm like, I'm gonna sit you down, I'm gonna have a conversation with you, friend. The NWHL is this wonderful league that everyone should watch. Obviously they're gonna be back on Twitch again this coming season. Do we know, Dan, of any TV deal or any special broadcasts? I know couple years ago in 19, they did the NWHL All-Star game in Nashville on NBCSN. Obviously, the finals last year that were moved to Boston, but the NWHL Isabel Cup last year, the finals and semifinals were on NBCSN. Obviously, a handful of Dream Gap games too as well. But does the National Women's Hockey League have an idea for a TV deal of any sort coming up this year, or is that kind of just the way things are in this economy that's not a possibility?
As of now, I don't think there is. I just want to correct you that the All-Star in Nashville wasn't on NBCSN. Those playoff games were the first ones on a TV station.
Right. It was wasn't it on the NBC app, or I just remember watching it on a big screen TV.
It might have been, but that was around the same time when then the Kendall Coyne Schofield did the
fastest skater, right?
The fastest skater out in San Jose. So that was the following year, because I don't think she was gone from the Whitecaps by then. She only played one season with them,
right?
But either way, I'm not sure. I couldn't say right now. Other than Twitch, that's the only place that I know the games are going to be broadcast on. I know at the rink where the Riveters are playing, eventually, because the first two games won't be in Newark, but the last 8 games, that rink has a dedicated YouTube channel. So I'm not sure if the games are gonna. Now it's just a camera that kind of pans back and forth.
A live barn, live barn, yep.
Right, exactly. And I know they do that for and they've done that a lot more recently because of COVID. With they host a lot of youth games and high school games and stuff like that, and when you couldn't have too many people in the building, and I'm pretty sure that's they dedicated this channel for that, so at least you can watch your kid from the parking lot or wherever you're watching from.
Right.
So other than that kind of thing, I don't think they have anything planned. There is going to be an outdoor game in Buffalo in February on a Monday afternoon, where Buffalo hosts Toronto.
Ooh.
And I would think maybe that's something that a Canadian broadcaster maybe would pick up. But that's just me, hopefully wishing, guessing for something really nice like that. It would be the second time the league does an official outdoor game. The Riveters played up there in 2019, at the end of 2019, late December, and won a really wild game where Buffalo had a player score 4 goals and they still lost the game. So
it's perfect that Toronto is going to play in this game, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so make sure everybody tunes in. I believe it's a Monday afternoon because it's a holiday. And I'm spacing on it. It might be President's Day here in the States, or President's Day, I guess. So we'll see. I don't know about NBC SN. I believe won't be a channel anymore at the end of this calendar year.
Right. Yeah.
So I wouldn't think that would be an option. But we're also kind of
there's big thing of Peacock.
I guess Peacock could be a thing. I've said in the past, whether it was on a podcast or in a private message with a player or a fellow writer, I don't think they should try and limit themselves to try and get on just NBC or CBS Sportsnet channel or Fox Sports 1 or 2 or 3 or any of those channels. I think, they find any channel. If you can find TNT or TBS, or Oprah has a network, right? Oprah is all about empowering women. Why can't we get games on there?
Get on. It'll like the NHL when they were on OLN for that first year. You're gonna have the NWHL on OWN.
Right. Okay. So I mean, there's other options, and I feel like sometimes, whether it's fans or again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to hate on the Dream Gap players, but I feel like they kind of, they're missing those steps. Like, so what if you have to play on, some weird channel? As long as it's on, most places where people can tune in, it's better than no channel, right? And it's we've gone with the NWHL. The first year games were on YouTube. I think they were on YouTube the second year too. And then they had games on Twitter where it was kind of like you could just click a link right at the top of your Twitter account or your timeline or whatever you want to call it, and you could watch the live feed right there. Were some of the streams pretty bad? 100%. Were some of the streams really bad? Yeah. There was one game I want to say it was when they did a game in Pittsburgh where it was Connecticut and Buffalo, and they didn't have something happen where the camera setup didn't arrive, or it wasn't set up the right way, and they ended up, somebody sat there basically between the benches and held their cell phone and panned back and forth as the play kept going back and forth. So
gosh, that's
we've come a long way, and that's why I was so happy and so proud of the players when they were able to have those games on NBCSN, and that was awesome. But and that should be the end game goal. But I think you kind of have to take a few steps along the way. Get games on A&E or any of these channels. There's so many channels out there now. Like,
hey, the National Women's Soccer League was on Lifetime. People forget about that. Yeah.
Right. So that's another option. Like there's so many other options out there. Don't limit yourselves and don't pigeonhole. Like you were only going to shoot for these particular ones. Like just make a first step and then build your way towards it. Which I guess, from thinking about everything I've said today, that seems to be a theme of mine. It's just, we have to build. It has to be gradual. You can't just go, A to Z in 2 seconds. You have to kind of go through the journey.
Well, let's hope that happens eventually, because like I said, you and I both want to be able to go to an arena and watch a game. Now, granted, I would just like to send a message to Tyler, and if she can, get a team here in Michigan, even if it's in Detroit, I will drive, or Chicago. Get a team in my neck of the woods, for goodness sakes, because I wouldn't mind going to a couple of these games and talking about it, because they're fun games to watch on TV, let alone actually being there. Maybe that's just me being a little biased.
Let me just add, too, I know you said, you live closest to Toronto, but you could also support, there are a few Michigan-born players in the league, so that's another angle that you can kind of, go down and whether it's, having those players on your show, supporting them that way, or buying their jerseys where they get a percentage of that money. There's a I think there was another player too just drafted from Minnesota, the first overall pick.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Taylor Gerard. She's from
Yes.
is it Livonia? She's from.
Yeah, she's an East
blanking on
Sider.
that.
That's the one bummer. West Michigan girls hockey, it's getting better, but it's nothing like the East side of the state. The Honey Bakes, the Bell Tires, they still have a stranglehold on it. Hear that,
Yeah.
hon? I gotta buy some T-shirts. We gotta get some NWHL stuff. She's the financial advisor, so I have to go. The big purchase got to go through her. Got to run through the boss. We have been chatting here with Dan Rice from the Hockey Writers. Guys, be sure to follow him on Twitter. He's an awesome guy. He likes to talk. He likes to talk women's hockey. Be sure to get a hold of him there. He is at, oh gosh, I just had it written down somewhere. Where is it? No, dang it.
DR
Diablo THW. Yes.
There you go.
That's what it was. I want to make sure I had it right because if I got it wrong, I was not going to be able to forgive myself. Dan, thanks again for coming on once again, man. Enjoy the Women's World Championships, and let's be talking NWHL when the season comes around and we actually have some full season games. It'll be fun, man.
Absolutely. I can't thank you enough for having me on. I really appreciate not only you giving me the platform to talk about this, but your enthusiasm and your attention to detail. I've not to poo-poo on anybody, but I've done a few of these things where you can kind of tell who's prepared and who's not prepared. And anytime you want me to come on, just give me a shout, and I'm more than happy to help you out.
Well, to be honest, Dan, I had about 2 weeks to get ready for this show, so I'll go with that. But, oh, man, it's always fun talking to you, Dan. All right, you take care. We're going to take a quick break here, folks, on 12 Ounce Sports. When we come back, State of Hoppy to talk about Minnesota hockey here on the Kuehl Show here on 12 Ounce Sports. And welcome back to the Kuehl Show, everyone. Tyler Kuehl here, the insider of the insiders for this August the 16th. Had to make sure what day it was. Sorry, when you don't do a show for 2 weeks, guys, you just kind of forget what day it is. You just know that your move-in date was August the 8th, and then you just go on from there. But we had an awesome conversation just before the break with Dan Rice from the Hockey Writers talking women's hockey. Be sure, guys, to check that out as well. Make sure you check it out on the Kuehl Show YouTube channel up tomorrow on demand and on your favorite podcatcher as well if you feel like just listening to us, because I guess if you don't want to see my ugly mug, I totally understand, even though you're missing out on a couple cool banners behind me here. But that's neither here nor there. Let's jump back to the NHL side of things, the Minnesota side of things, if you will. Yes, I know we talked with Pat Micheletti a couple weeks ago. Yes, we've been focused on the Central Division a lot lately. Calm down. It's fun. It's awesome. And the Central Division, guys, may be the toughest division next year. We'll explain why when we bring in one of the co-hosts of the Soda Pod on the Hockey Podcast Network. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. None other than Hoppy, State of Hoppy. Hoppy, how are we doing today, man?
We're doing great. And I don't know what you're talking about, Tyler. Last time we did this, I actually had to call in via phone, and this is a far more pleasant experience seeing your beautiful face.
Oh, thanks, Hoppy. Now, granted, that was not Hoppy's fault. That was my fault. But now that we're at this house, and according to my drop frames at 0%, as I pound on this wooden table harder than anything, we should be okay. But, Hoppy, man, let's first of all, there's something we need to address here. If anyone who ever watches the Soda Pod, which you can, by the way, every Sunday night, right, guys? Right, Hoppy?
The live streams are definitely hit or miss right now just because it's summertime, but we always drop the podcast and a lot of video content on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays.
Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, because you have to see, if you're listening to the podcast right now on the Kuehl Show, that's totally fine. Whether you listen on Google, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever, that's fine. Jump over to the Kuehl Show YouTube channel when you're watching this, because look at first of all, the Marco Rossi sweater. Love that right behind you there. The Ottawa 67 sweater. But the Growler collection behind Hoppy is impressive. And Hoppy, you said right before we came on here, that is not it.
No, I'd say that's probably just a touch over half.
So, and I mentioned this off top of the show if you're just joining us here on the Kuehl Show on 12 Ounce Sports. On the Soda Pod, they don't just talk hockey, even though that's fun to talk about, but you guys love to talk about craft beer. And I myself, yes, I drink my fair share of Canadian and Bell's over here as well, but I love trying different craft beers. Whenever I go to a brewery, I got to have a flight because I need to have like 6 or 7 beers. In Minnesota, you guys have a pretty good scene. Now, yes, in Grand Rapids, we were known as Beer City, USA, but Minnesota's got a pretty good craft brew scene.
Oh, man, it's pretty crazy, too, to see how it keeps on growing. Like, even through COVID, there were some that were opening up. But yeah, there's a little over 200, I think, throughout the state of Minnesota. I've been to 99 of them. Big
Holy
100
moly.
coming up here. But man, so you talk about Grand Rapids being Beer City. At one point, and it's not the case anymore, they're somewhere in the mix, but Duluth, Minnesota, home of the Bulldogs, people are probably familiar with from college hockey supremacy. They actually at one point were the city throughout all of the U.S. that had the highest breweries per capita.
Holy
Um,
moly.
Up there, and I mean they're not a small town by any means, especially in Minnesota standards, but obviously nothing compared to the Twin Cities. But they've got double-digit breweries up there.
Well, and that's a funny thing too, because people think Duluth, because whenever people see a big college, they think, oh, it's a big town. Well, Duluth it's a bigger town, but you're right. It's not like the Twin Cities where it's, wall to wall people all the time. It seems like Duluth's a little bit of a smaller town, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what makes those kind of places fun. Like we live on the west side of Grand Rapids, but if you go north to like Rockford, yes, it's within driving distance of Grand Rapids, but it's smaller and there's like a couple cool breweries in there, and people like it, whatnot. Now, granted, half of that is considered Grand Rapids, so the greater Grand Rapids area, I guess, is the way you call it. So it just kind of blends into the Grand Rapids brewery scene. Now, if you went out to like Lansing, now, granted, Lansing doesn't have a whole lot of anything, but that's neither here nor there. That'd be more, I guess, comparable to, because East Lansing in particular, has Michigan State, very similar to the size of Duluth. But there's nothing good in East Lansing. Don't tell my wife I said that. Anyways, she's a big Sparty fan. All of her family went to Michigan State. But
Oh boy.
Hoppy, let's get into the hockey here. Even though we like to drink beer and watch hockey, let's talk about the players that don't drink beer and watch hockey or play hockey, because that'd probably not be the best idea.
Oh, so we can't talk about Oshie then?
Well, okay. Now, what they do in the Beauty League is up to them. They can do whatever they want then. Alex Stalock can do whatever he wants, and whatever makes him more flexible and less likely to blow another knee out. Because there's a couple games on. Oh, yeah. Do you follow a lot of that, the Beauty League? I know it's pretty cool down there. I think they play in Edina, right?
Yep, they play right in Edina. So actually, 2 years ago I think it was 2 years ago now, was the inaugural season of it. It was $5 to get in, went to charity, and me and my buddy would go occasionally on Wednesdays. It's like a 10-minute drive for me. And I mean, it was maybe 2/3 capacity at the time. And my understanding now is that it's a $15 ticket and it's like standing room, like just packed every time. I don't know what's going on now with some of the, COVID stuff coming on, but
Yeah.
I know they already had to say that kids can't sit in the alley and wait for autographs anymore, but it's still a really cool thing that they do.
Yeah, it's a fun. The Beauty League is a 4-on-4 summer league that college NHLers play in to get in shape, I guess is the way to describe it. That's the same way that Jeff Hogan of the Grand Rapids Griffins used to get in shape when he'd come skate with us in the summertime. I just gave him an excuse to get away from his wife. But it's fun to watch. Like back when he played, Dustin Bufflin played in it. I think Brock Besser was still a part of it for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Team Bick is the big one there. So at least that's the one I always seem to see in the Twitter feed on there. But let's get to the big team in Minnesota, the Minnesota Wild. When we had Pat on a couple weeks ago, Hoppy, it was so weird. It had just happened, the Ryan Suter and Zach Parise buyouts. And I pretty much asked Pat, like, Pat, next year's going to be okay, right? Because the next three after that are just going to be miserable for the Wild. And Hoppy, I'm asking the same question. Are the Wild going to be able to make next year worth it? Because after this coming season, it's not going to be a fun time in the state of hockey.
No, but it's interesting because it's kind of a double-edged sword there too, where yes, like this is the year that you'd think they'd capitalize, but I mean, you're going to fall off the cliff if you try and bring in a bunch of big contracts and then can't make it work next year. I think this year is a little bit of a step back. The blue line, not like a major downgrade, but it got worse. You can't debate that. We're probably going to see some level of goaltending regression. I do still think the tandem is going to be in a great position, but they played pretty well last year. And then we've got the forward group. Nothing's changed, except we're going to be injecting a couple of young guns potentially throughout the run. But that's where I think that moving past this year, where this is going to be a little bit of a setback, kind of find themselves a little bit, you're hoping that by next season, we're going to have Boldy, we're going to have Rossi, we're going to have Addison all playing bigger roles because they got that first year hump out of the way. And that's the only way they're going to get through all of this is with those ELCs, right?
Yeah, and that's how you have to do it in today's cap world. And this is before the flat cap even came into existence. You need to have, yes, you have your big guns, your $9-10 million players, but you also need guys that can play for $800K, the ELCs, that can be efficient. And that's what the Wild have had to do for the longest time. Now, though, they kind of went with a big contract today, granted 1 year. This is why I think it's Bill Guerin's like, all right, we're going to try it this year, and then it's just going to go pfft. Because you get Kevin Fiala for 1 year at $5.1 million. Mm-hmm. Now tell me, is Kevin Fiala worth over $5 million? Or do you think this is, hey, Kevin, we need you for 1 year, whatever you want, sign it, whatever. We'll do what we got to do.
I think Kevin Fiala is in a weird spot where he's shown signs and flashes of greatness, but it's never really been put together. And I do think it's a little overblown, his inconsistency, right? Like, he doesn't go on major bad streaks, but there's question marks defensively. He's not always popping on the score sheet, but he also hasn't really played with anyone, in all fairness.
True, yeah.
So I think this year is kind of a prove-it year for both sides, right? Like, Guerin will be thrilled to be in a huge contract dispute next year because Fiala popped off and, potted 30+. But it's kind of that chance to see, because he wasn't going to get the long-term deal for the dollars he wanted based on the track record thus far. So he's taking this 1 year, prove it, and if not, then, probably part ways at that point, and you get less return, which is a bummer.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, because I remember we mentioned the numbers, because that's what I think the big thing is. Everyone says this has to be the year for the Minnesota Wild. To at least try to go for it, because
that's not happening.
It's going to be tough, because like I said, this year they're only paying a little over almost $4.8 million between Parise and Suter for buyout, but then almost 13 mil, over almost 15 mil, almost 15 mil for the next 3 years. It's gonna be rough. But like I said, you still have the goaltending, though. You still have Cam Talbot, and surprise to me, still Kaapo Kähkönen, because I thought that was going to be the guy Seattle was taking. They take Carson Soucy instead, and now with them getting Philip Grubauer, I think the goaltending situation in Seattle is just fine and dandy. But I thought Kähkönen was going to be the guy. Now we're seeing, like you mentioned, there's probably going to be some aggression. Cam Talbot has shown that he can be a good goaltender, but he does come in waves. But now that he has a good backup behind him, I'm pretty sure if you're Dean Evison, you look at that and you say, all right, I have two goaltenders. I can go 1A with one. They fall back. Then the other guy goes in. And that's the point of having a good tandem.
Yeah, and it's funny, too. We were just talking about it on our show the other night. Kähkönen's still technically a rookie. So he is actually the best rookie going into Wild training camp this year.
Calder Trophy. It's open this year. Back to back
for the Wild, huh?
I think it'd be the first time that would ever happen, if obviously knock on wood. But yeah,
if. But to be honest, I don't really care about that stuff. It's I think this year it hurts more to lose Soucy and keep Kähkönen, but long term, it's absolutely a better scenario for the Wild to land Kähkönen and have him sit there, learn under Talbot, not have to step in and play that number one role. We got 2 more years of Talbot on what's turned out to be a really good, cheap deal for a very capable, again, 1A, 1B timeshare type goalie, which is going to help largely get through this just very unfortunate financial time. Man, you mentioned obviously the price goes up for Suter and Parise here in the next 3 years. There are contracts that are going to come off. We lose Victor Rask, who we're just going to miss so dearly after this season.
I love the sincerity.
That's $4 million off the books. The year after that, it's Dumba, $6 million off the books. So you're going to be able to piecemeal some of this. Guerin has shown he's not afraid to pull the trigger and move players where needed. So he can finesse and do what he needs to, especially with now their cupboard being pretty stocked with prospects. I'm not sitting here clamoring to trade a Rossi or a Boldy, but if you can bring in a top-tier talent, I know Eichel's obviously been tossed around a lot. If you throw in an extra piece, one of those mid-tier prospects on top of any kind of deal you're doing there, maybe you get him to retain salary. Heck, you can get Eichel for $6 or $7 million a year. I think Guerin can find a way to make that work, especially if a Kevin Fiala is part of that trade.
Yeah, and I remember I was looking at the numbers, and if I'm not mistaken, I heard what Kevin Adams was asking for was
He's an idiot.
it's so hard. Maybe I'm slightly like trying to be generous and positive towards him because he was one of the first real Griffins prospects to come back in the 90s up there, and then he won a cup, and then he's the first Griffin ever won a Stanley Cup. But anyways, I see the moves that he's made, and I know now he's trying to hold after getting fleeced for Taylor Hall, which we all saw was going to happen anyways. But he realizes he can't let that happen with Jack Eichel. I think the price was one or two prospects. I think it was like one or two. It was either 2 first-round picks or it had to be a first and a second-round pick and a current player. So that's a general. I'm paraphrasing. I'm probably off by 1 or 2 pieces, but that's the high price that Kevin Adams is sticking to for Jack Eichel, because he's realizing that if he's going to give up this big prospect, whether Jack Eichel plays another game again, because that is still a possibility, but like he wants to make sure he gets as much as full return, especially if, like you said, if he's going to have to retain some cash.
Yeah, problem is he's kind of put himself in a really bad spot there, because I'm totally with Kevin Adams. You want to maximize the value you get back for this player. Guess what? The player has a procedure that he wants to get done on his neck that I understand where there's reservation by the club, but guess what? Until that's done, teams aren't going to be paying you top dollar. They want to see that he can come back from it.
Right.
So the other option is let him get the procedure and then force him, hey, you have to play, right? Because at that point, he wants to make his 10 mil. But right now, Kevin Adams is letting Eichel sit, not going to have any possibility of him playing for the team. He's gonna get his full $10 million in salary, and no one's gonna trade because he's gonna keep sitting there in the same health predicament that he's in. So, like, something's got to give. He's either got to lower the asking price, or he's got to let him go forward and get the procedure he wants.
You know, I would love to get Jordan Deschain in this conversation. He does the Buffalo Sabres writing for the Hockey Writers, because him and I have gone after the Pajulas time and again. And I do you wonder, maybe this is the tin hat sitting on my head here, but how much you think is the Pajulas saying we're not going to allow him to do this? Because I feel like Kevin, I don't think Kevin can be this dumb. But then again, Kevin, the reason why he got the job is because he had such a good relationship with the Pajulas in the first place.
Because he's a puppet.
Yeah, and that's why I wonder if Kevin's thinking, listen, if we let him get this thing and it works out, then we can make big bucks. Or if anything, holy smokes, he gets the procedure, it works, he comes back in full form, and oh my goodness, the Sabres are good. God forbid that happens too, Hoppy. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, who has the biggest reservations on this? Is it Kevin Adams? Or is it a little bit higher up the food chain?
I think it's one and the same. To your point, the reason he's got the job is because he's going to do what they tell him to.
That's true. Get rid of Taylor Hall. Let's get something for him. I can only do $4 million. They're asking me to keep $4 million. That's fine. We got the Buffalo Bills. They're in the championship game. We're fine.
Buffalo Bills leaving Buffalo.
Oh gosh, man, the Bills. Good Lord. Buffalo needs a winner. That's why I was like cheering for the Bills last year, because I'm like, you know what? That city needs to have a champion, because all those people that got put through flaming tables, they had to pay for hospital bills somehow. It's got to happen for that city in some form. And unfortunately, the Sabres won't make it happen. But I remember, because the Rangers were seemingly the front runners for Eichel. And I know we're somehow going away from the Wild, but this is how I'm tying it back in. How much do you think Billy Guerin is willing to get rid of to get Jack Eichel, if he is still actually willing, if that's still a possibility?
Oh, it's absolutely still a possibility. People like to say, oh no, Bill Guerin said he's out at this price. Okay, at this price. I couldn't begin to speculate what Bill Guerin is willing to give up. Pretty much where I sit, and there's a little bit of flexibility to this, but pretty much where I reach is Fiala, Boldy, first round pick. That's about as far as I'm willing to go. At least as it sits today. If we had a fully healthy Jack Eichel, way different conversation.
Oh, then you're giving up Iowa.
We'll give him the whole state. We don't need it.
Well, yeah, no, yeah. Well, it's talking about the Iowa Wild. The whole state. Well, the whole state has less value than the Iowa Wild. Let's be honest here, kids. I know people from Iowa. They'd agree with me. There's the Hawkeyes and
couple great breweries though.
There's a couple. That's the thing about some of those small towns. There's a couple good breweries in small towns like that.
Oh baby.
However, if you're driving too fast, you'll miss them.
Right.
and people go 90 through Iowa to get through Iowa. Same thing with Nebraska from people I've been told.
Oh man, my dad's from Nebraska. I'm a depressed Cornhuskers fan because being a Minnesota fan isn't painful enough.
My buddy from Iowa is a
Nebraska
big Huskers fan, and he has the same predicament every year. I can't say much though because I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong in this. I'm a Michigan fan. I'm going to Michigan Rutgers next month, and I'm like, is it because like I look at the Huskers and I'm like, you guys shouldn't feel bad. No, you guys shouldn't have any expectations. We have expectations, and we suck every year.
Yeah, it's different. There's definitely the difference of whether there's expectations or not, which I mean that's pretty much the epitome of the Minnesota Twins, but
Right.
I don't know, at a certain point it gets old just being like, yeah, maybe in a couple of years we'll see. And I don't know, I still have faith in Scott Frost. It's not going to happen quick, but this would irk any Minnesota fans listening, but I'll take him over the cheerleader that is PJ Fleck.
Listen, when Michigan smoked Minnesota last year, I thought to myself, Michigan's going to be good, and then Minnesota sucked. So that really
that's not a good barometer.
That did not help out at all. That made it look really bad. Gosh almighty, college football season. Everyone knows, obviously this is a hockey program. I love hockey, love college hockey, everything hockey. College football season comes around every Saturday afternoon. I'm stuck in my TV. I can't move from it. NFL, I do watch the NFL, but I don't watch it as hard as college. I bring out this TV that's in here. I bring it to the living room to watch college football. That's what I do all day. My wife hates it, but I don't care.
Fair enough.
I get yelled at on Sundays for it, but it's okay. But no, how do we get here? Iowa, the state of Iowa. I was saying, like, how did we get to college football here on the Keel Show here on 12 Ounce Sports? But the Wild itself, I'm trying to figure it out because I want to say because the Central Division is going to be a weird and fun and crazy division this coming year.
It's scary.
Because you have the teams that may. I mean, I'm going to go on a limb here. Your bottom two teams may be so I'll say bottom three because I think Arizona's going to finish last. But St. Louis and Nashville may be going 6 and 7 in this division.
Wow, you're the only person that agrees with me.
Oh, well, because here's
Look
the thing.
at that.
And Peyton Turnage, God bless his soul, he may agree with me on this because Nashville, they have UC Saros, but you could tell they're trying in a transition phase. St. Louis has the loose cannon known as Jordan Binnington, who can play. Like, I remember when the NHL has been putting out these highlight clips of teams and showing here's why this team had some good stuff last year. Jordan Binnington made shooters mad last year. I'm like, are you kidding? Shooters were so happy to face Jordan Binnington last year half the time because, my goodness. Yes, did he give his heart out in the 4 games against Colorado? Absolutely, because it's the playoffs. But at what point did you tell me that Jordan Binnington was a star goaltender last year? Laura Astoria agreed with me as well. Like, he's a good goaltender, but he doesn't have it. So that's why I pushed St. Louis and Nashville to the bottom of this division because you're not going to tell me that Chicago's going to be not. They're going to be a better team. They were in a playoff conversation last year. Dallas, if they don't have COVID issues, they could have made the playoffs last year. They'll be a good team this year. A little bit depleted, but they still have a good goaltending group. Braden Hoppy there. Winnipeg, I can't count them out. Even though they had a bad end of the regular season last year, they're still a good team. And then you have Minnesota right in the middle of it. It's so hard to look at that division and say, this is going to be an easy playoff berth for any of the 4 or the top 3 that make it. They may have the majority of the teams. I think the Pacific's still going to be awful, but they may have 5 teams.
That can hurt you, though. That can hurt you.
Having so many teams play or how many teams in the postseason? There may be 5. There may be 5 Central Division teams in the Western Conference playoffs next year, Hoppy.
Well, what I'm saying is the Pacific, like being as bad as it is, do teams beat up on them and get propelled a little bit by how many games they're playing against the Californias? But I don't know. We'll see. Because right now, the only team that's a lock to get out of there is Vegas. But you got to think, even though they haven't really done anything that smart this year, Edmonton's probably in.
Well, Edmonton, I think, will finish number 2 just because they have McDavid and Draisaitl, and that can get you through an 82-game season. But as we've learned with Edmonton, similar to Toronto, having the best players on your roster does not mean you're going to be successful in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And now that's why I look, and that's why Minnesota having the probably the best tandem in the Central right now is going to be in goal is going to be so important. Where would, if you, on a wild guess right now today, where would you say they would finish in this Central Division? Obviously, I mentioned Colorado, and Colorado probably go towards the top. Yeah. Even though there's something brewing in there that just shows collapse, but that's to be foreseen in the spring. We'll have to wait on that.
Yeah. I'd say anything from 3 to 6 wouldn't shock me, but right now, as the roster's constructed, we'll just say Kaprizov's playing. I got him penciled for 5.
Okay.
Which is scary.
Well, and geesh, I think the Central is going to look like how the North was being projected last year, where literally every team, with the exception of the top team, because everyone was far and away Toronto, which ended up being the truth, but like between 2 and 6, it could be any array of teams. That's how I'm seeing the Central this year.
And I agree. I do have 2 teams, though, and again, it could alter anywhere from 2 to 6, but I personally think very highly of Dallas and Winnipeg. I think they're that next tier, sitting at 2 and 3 in some order. And then it's Chicago, Minnesota, and St. Louis beating the heck out of each other to see who gets that last 1 or 2 spots.
Classic Norris Division battle for middle, right in the middle of it there. Minnesota. Well, pardon me, Minnesota team obviously was the North Stars. You shut up. But that's people that are screaming at home. It was the North Stars. They played the Met back in the day. Okay. Thank you, 75-year-old man. Have a good day. But let's talk about that big elephant in the room here. Kirill Kaprizov. Hasn't happened yet. Micheletti is 99% sure that he's going to sign. Where are you at with Mr. Kaprizov, Hoppy? Are you optimistic or are you nervous yet?
I mean, first off, thank you so much for having me follow Pat Micheletti.
It's been a few weeks. Wonderful. I gave you a good buffer.
It probably sounds bad, and I should be knocking on a ton of wood. I'm not worried at all.
Okay.
Like, the reality is, if you want to play in the KHL, you go right ahead. There's no way that you want to do that. At this point, my understanding is that Kaprizov hasn't really been involved at all. This is just his agent strong-arming, and he said, Kirill, you just go play all summer and let me do this. And at some point, he's going to get involved and be like, I want to play. Let's figure this out. It's not going to be a 7 or 8 year deal like Guerin wants. It's not going to be a 3 year deal like he wants. Where does it land and how long does it take for us to get there? I don't know, but 4 or 5 years makes a lot of sense just from the aspect of getting past the Parise Suter buyouts so that you can throw the bag at him.
Yeah, because that's probably the end of all in this. And that's why guys, and I know I bring it back to Toronto. I know what I'm doing here. But that's why guys like, Matthews signed for 5 and Marner, they didn't go the full 8 years because eventually they knew they could probably get paid more. Now Marner is the value, I think, is decreasing, but that's a conversation for another time. But now this is kind of backtracking here, Hoppy. Do you think the reason why any real discussion hasn't really amped up for Jack Eichel is because Kaprizov has not been signed yet?
No, I think that's purely because kind of what we talked about. Adams is holding his ground while we still have an unhealthy Eichel with no path towards a healthy Eichel.
That is true. Yeah, that is a big asset because I'm pretty sure if Kaprizov signed tomorrow, Kevin Adams is like, I want Kaprizov. Well, like, of course you're gonna want Kaprizov. Well, you're gonna want a 100% healthy player compared to a guy that wants a constructive surgery that's never happened before. Right. Now, yes, kids, Bo Jackson was able to play baseball on an artificial hip, but that's baseball with an artificial hip. Artificial neck playing hockey. And I remember there was there was the interview on 31 Thoughts podcast with the doctor that would be the one doing the surgery. And he gave 85% of it was, here's why it's going to work. Here's why it's able to be okay. This is how I know that Jack Eichel could have the surgery and play hockey. And then there was a little blip in there where he said, well, here's how it could go very wrong. And I'm like, we don't want that to go very wrong. Oh, gosh, there's another dog in the house. Oh, gosh, my wife just opened the door. Why is there another dog? Wixie, I'm talking to State of Hoppy here. It's a very important interview, and you're bringing in cute puppies into my office.
And they're like, what's a State of Hoppy?
It's a wonderful thing. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Hockey Podcast Network. That's how you plug to dogs, I guess.
Dogs, yep. That's the best way to plug anything.
Slap some peanut butter over top of it, and they'll love it forever. But No, I really, because I do want Kaprizov to sign. He's such a fun player to watch. He's an exciting player. He's good. He's talented. He brought a much needed offensive burst to I know we probably brought this up in the past, but a boring Minnesota Wild team, because that's how they've always been perceived as. All of a sudden, you have this flashy young Russian kid going around scoring goals, and all of a sudden, it's like, does anyone remember the early 90s Canucks with Pavel Bure? That's how it kind of was. I mean, they had the established vets in Vancouver. Bure comes in, and boom, they're one win away from the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, I'm not exactly saying that they're going to somehow lose the New York Rangers in the 2024 Stanley Cup Finals, but I'm just saying, like, this kid is almost needed for Minnesota to continue to try to be a contending team in the years to come, right?
Yeah, and it's weird too because I mean, Wild fans have already waited so long to finally get him on the team, and granted, really small sample size in the grand scheme of things. There, 55 games. He was everything they hoped he would be, though, and now It's one of those things where it's rocking a hard place. Half of them are pissed at him that he hasn't signed yet, which I reiterate, he hasn't been involved at all. It's his agent that's running the show, and the other half is like, Garen, what are you doing, you idiot? Pay him whatever he wants. And I'm not on that train either. I think that if he wants to hold strong and if he wants to get lower term, he better be prepared to get lower dollars too, because that's how it works.
It's so hard because, here on the show, we've had probably the two of the most historic holdouts in the cap era, contract holdouts. Obviously, I was alive for the Eric Lindros season-long holdout, but that was a much different scenario with Bobby Clark back in the day. There was the Ryan O'Reilly one that happened for a few games. Oh, gosh, I think it's been 10 years now since that happened. But we had the William Nylander holdout and the almost holdout of Mitch Marner. I can tell you that being a part of Marner Watch was the worst thing ever. And now looking back on it, it was a big, fat waste of time. And you almost hope that doesn't happen again because, players they know if their dollar amount can be reached, that they'd be willing to sit for a minute and wait for things to happen. But you don't want that to happen because it may take the player a long time to get back in the swing of things. Now, yes, Kaprizov is skating. It's not like he's going to be, a fish out of water when he comes back. If the knock on wood thing happens, hopefully it doesn't happen. But it's so hard to cheer for a guy and be on the side of, we want this guy here, but how could he want to hold out for more money, the selfish son of a what? It's so hard because you're trying to gauge on both sides. You want the guy to sign, but you want the guy to be happy so he plays well for your team.
Yeah, it's tough, and I don't know. It's hard to say because everyone likes to say, oh, Kirill, like everyone says such great things about him in the locker room. Like he's such a good guy, just wants to be part of the team. He wouldn't be the guy that holds out until December to hopefully make something happen, but we don't know. People probably didn't think Nylander would do it. It's just a weird state of not knowing, right? I just, like, everyone just wants something to happen here. Like, whether it's what they want the outcome to be or not, it's just some kind of resolution. But, again, I'm totally in Garen's camp here. He is doing everything right. He's holding strong, and I don't know if I've ever really had faith in a front office in Minnesota like I do right now between him, a lot of the people that he's brought in with him, because a lot of GMs would be afraid to bring in a Shero, bring in a Judd Brackett. Like, those are guys that are insulating and making the organization better. And he's like, nah, I'm pretty confident with myself that I'm not going to lose this job. Let's bring in the best.
Well, why you don't like don't miss Chuck Fletcher? Is that a thing?
Not even a little bit.
I remember we went after Chuck Fletcher on this show, which was when Alex was co-hosting with us, and I still remember, like, we just, like, and this is the guy, I get it why we went after him. I'm like, man, we're going after another team's GM here. Usually it's just us yelling at Kyle Dubas every so often, or being in the States, we would go after Kenny Holland. Well, we wouldn't go after him. We just laugh at him. That's all we did with Kenny Holland. And we still do. Look what he's signing Mike Smith for 2 years and Darnell Nurse for $25 billion over there in Edmonton. They'll be great. It'll be a perfect regular season team over there in Edmonton. But Chuck Fletcher was one that I just remember saying to myself, this guy is a buffoon. This guy, he's trying hard, but it's like, it's just not working out.
And I think some of it gets blown out of proportion too, because a lot of the moves at the time, like, you don't hate, but then in retrospect, when it doesn't work, it's easy to turn him into the punching bag. everyone in Minnesota, don't care what they tell you now, was celebrating harder than they ever have on that 4th of July. I know I was when they signed Parisi and Suter. The Hansel trade, right? That's one that gets beaten up a lot.
Yeah.
That's one that, again, like, he's the type of piece you add for a playoff run. But for some reason, something happened with the chemistry in the locker room. We don't know to this day what happened in derailing that season. But again, it just didn't work. When on paper, a lot of people didn't hate the trade, right? And I don't know. He's certainly notorious for trading away draft picks to try and compete. But with some rosters, that's kind of what you have to do unless you're willing to burn it all down, which, let's be real, most GMs don't have that kind of support from the front office that they're not going to lose their job if they try and rebuild. Like, everyone says it's so easy to decide to rebuild. Yeah, if the owner supports you through it, absolutely it's the right thing to do. But he's fighting for his job.
And because that was the falling out with Trevor Linden in Vancouver, because the owners didn't want to move on. Trevor Linden saw the writing on the wall and said, "Guys, we have to get rid of the Sedins. We got to blow this whole thing up if we want to get good again." And then Trevor Linden, they parted ways. That's why that's the PC term of how that whole thing went down. And you know what? Whoever you ask is who you ask. Because some people think Trevor Linden was right. Some people think the owners are right. Now, yes, are the Vancouver Canucks a possible playoff team this year in the Pacific? Maybe. Now,
Maybe.
I mean, last year went a little rough. Now, once again, COVID got in the way of the Vancouver Canucks season as well. But it's so hard to just flip a switch and say we're going to be bad. It took the Leafs. It took them 4 or 3 years to accept the fact they need to rebuild. That 2013 playoff run kind of ruined plans because that administration said, "See, we can be a playoff team, guys." Should never have been the case whatsoever with that team. I love James Reimer to death, but he's not a starting goaltender. Neither is Jonathan Bernier. But it's so hard for teams to accept it. Like I said, ownership groups, leadership groups say, like, well, if we can try to make it work. Because that was the thing with the Wild for the longest time is, hey, go for it just to get 2 more home playoff games. That's kind of how it was. And it's so hard to try to go away from that because, hey, if you can get to the playoffs, you can say you can get to the playoffs. That was the problem with these Red Wings behind us for the longest time because the last 6 years were, let's just get to the first round, keep the streak alive, and who cares if we actually win?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the Wild weren't much different, except that it was a way, way shorter streak. It was, let's limp in, let's see what we can do, and then get pummeled by the Blackhawks.
Hey, trust me, it was weird because I knew a lot of Hawks friends, and I would cheer for the Wild tour. I'm like, Darcy Kemper is gonna lead them to the top. Josh Harding's gonna be the hero. Nope, 5 games, 5 games, 6
Jesper
games.
Wallstedt gonna be the hero. Oh,
Man. Is that why 2014 is probably the best year ever for the Wild? Just because that miracle, I don't want to say it was a miracle series, because that Colorado team we learned was just completely just had this influx of luck. They rode the coattails of a screaming Patrick Waugh, a Semyon Varlamov that at that time was really good. Now he's probably better than he is now, but I'm like, I know we mentioned it the last time, like that 14 team in Minnesota was just, it was crazy how it all actually just happened to work out.
Yeah, and I mean, it worked out for a series, which was cool, but like, if anyone actually thought they were contenders that year, they were kidding themselves.
No, nobody, no offense, but nobody picked Minnesota to beat Colorado.
No.
It was just like, I know it's going to go back and it's going to give my buddy Eric Pestilano nightmares. 0-3. It's just, if we're going to go into that.
Jeez.
Oh, now.
Uh-huh.
Well, okay. Now, you being a diehard Wild guy, is 0-3 the best season in the Wild's history?
I mean, you have to say that, right? Just because of how far they made it, but it's one of those crazy things where like zero expectations. Like during the regular season, that set the precedent for the Wild being a boring team. You have Jacques Lemaire, who incredible coach, not very fun to watch.
No.
Right? They have one skilled player in Marian Gaborik, and the rest of it is grind, give me a Wes Walls, whatever. Like, that is just not the style of hockey that a lot of people want to see. But then come playoff time, it's exactly what you want to see, right? So it was just a weird bringing everything together where it was an awesome run, but I don't know, the season as a whole is still really, really weird and confusing to me.
Because they were 7th, right? Were they 7th or 8th? No, because because
Weren't
in the West.
I would
Oh
have
man,
said eighth. Wasn't Vancouver one?
in 03? Oh gosh, this is gonna hurt.
That might not have been.
Now,
That's too long ago for me.
now, gosh almighty, kids, we're gonna test. I mean, the Wi-Fi works just fine right now. I have to look it up now though. I have to know because I don't think Detroit finished 1. It was no, gosh, I don't need divisions. I want the actual full scale standings. Gosh almighty, this is hurting. NHL.com saved me. I tried to use in the Google standings, but that was a dumb idea. Dallas finished first. That was right. That was the Marty Turco like 1.03 goals against average year.
Jeez.
Detroit was 2, Colorado was 3. So it was 3 versus 6 in that series. Anaheim was 7.
Okay.
That's why people say Anaheim was a bigger upset than Detroit. How could Edmonton with Tommy Salo not get it done against Marty Turco and the Dallas Stars? Unbelievable. Gosh.
Right.
That you talk about it.
Things.
That was a first round rivalry back in the day, Edmonton and Dallas. They played each other like 5 out of 6 first rounds or something ridiculous like that. But, wrapping things up here, Hoppy, and this is probably be it here for the Kula show because my wife apparently needs to go see me for something. Unless Hoppy has some crazy revelation of how the season's going to go out here for the Minnesota Wild, do you think this Wild team in the next decade, I'm going to give you a big, wide time frame for this question. Does a Stanley Cup go to Minnesota? In 10, I know it's hard because the salary cap can change and players, and there's all these certain anomalies and things that could happen along the way. But is it gonna happen? Because I know the droughts in like Toronto, that's a big thing, and in Canada in general. But like Minnesota, it's like maybe it's just me being an outsider, but it just doesn't seem like it's not like if they don't win the Stanley Cup, people are gonna go crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting that feel from being the outside. What do you say?
I mean, it's really interesting that you bring this to me on the heels of the 30-year anniversary of the 91 World Series victory for the Minnesota Twins, which just so happens...
the year. I'm about to say, I'm like, no, it's not. It's not October.
It must have been a different date or something because they were playing stuff for it the other day that it was like the anniversary of the win. So I don't know if dates were different then for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, they probably got bored. I'm like, oh, the Twins are going to lose tonight, so we're going to show you this game instead.
That probably makes way more sense actually. But that is the last major championship for the state of Minnesota. Was 30 years ago, unless you count the Lynx of the WNBA, who they have dominated.
They're pretty good, yeah.
It's just not the same when it's just a different league with less teams. It just doesn't feel the same. It's still exciting to have it happen, but so that alone just makes me feel like no, Minnesota just can't win championships. There's some kind of curse. In the next 10 years, yeah, I think Bill Guerin absolutely could get it done. There's obviously a lot for us to see unfold past these next 3 or 4 years, but yeah, I absolutely think that with the group that they have in their front office, they absolutely are capable of doing it.
It'd be interesting because yes, it is the state of hockey and of course Minnesota and Duluth is always in there. St. Cloud finally, almost got all the way. They got all the way to the championship game, almost made it happen. But it's the hockey scene in Minnesota is so huge, and I get it. Minnesota Wild are not the upper echelon in the National Hockey League, but I dare anyone to come tell me that Minnesota is not the best state for all things hockey. I will fight anyone that tells me any different. And this is coming from a guy that is from Michigan. Minnesota, high school hockey, AAA hockey, whatever, college hockey, junior hockey. It is still the pinnacle for hockey. That's why it's called the state of hockey. A Stanley Cup would be nice because unfortunately, Stefan Diggs couldn't just figure it out for one more game and play the Super Bowl in Minnesota. Couldn't figure it out. It would have been a cool story.
Yeah, that one stings a little bit for sure. But it's funny because last year was the first year that all 5 Division I hockey teams in Minnesota made it to the tournament. And It was actually the last year that they had 5 teams because now they've already expanded to 6. So yeah, if that on top of anyone that hasn't been to, heard of, seen what the state tournament is like here for high school,
No.
it's on a whole
It's
different level.
the tournament. It's the
Yeah,
tournament.
tournament.
That's the hashtag. Yeah.
The tourney.
The tourney. Sorry. Yeah. Tourney. No, I watch it too. And it was so weird this year without fans because any other year for every single game when they're at XL, it's crazy. Like who else, what other state can you see 19,000 people for a high school hockey game? That's how it is. Just about it's incredible. And that's why I tell everyone I was going to do it last year. I was saving up money to go up to Minnesota and then COVID. And then you couldn't go to it. So maybe next year, knock on wood, hopefully this thing gets figured out by next spring and summer. But it's an interesting world we live in. Hopefully I can make it up there because if it's fun watching on TV, it'll probably be better to be up in Minnesota because then I can check out the awesome breweries there in the Twin Cities. Right, Hoppy?
Absolutely. And no, you absolutely need to go if you haven't because you're right. It's not even close to comparable on TV to what you're seeing live.
Because people people that are high school football fanatics, they're in Michigan, like, oh, high school football student sections are fun. Go to these things. Like it's because then you're not even open. It's an enclosed arena where it's just louder and it's a whole hoot and manny. Oh man, one of these days, Hoppy. One of these days, though, we'll all be able to go and hang out in arenas and bars and not have to worry about it. Someday, right?
Someday.
We have been chatting with the State of Hoppy. He's one of the co-hosts of the Soda Pod on the Hockey Podcast Network. Him and Roni are doing an awesome job. The whole crew there at THPN, all their shows are awesome there. Go check them out as well as shows here on 12 Ounce Sports as well. Be sure to follow Hoppy at State of Hoppy at the Soda Pod on Twitter. And that is it here for this episode of The Kuehl Show, folks. Hashtag TKS if you want to get involved in the conversation at The Kuehl Show. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Hoppy, it's been a pleasure, man. It's fun. It was fun to see your beautiful face this time on the show. Got things all worked out. And hopefully we talk again soon and hopefully talk about Minnesota with a guy named Kaprizov in the lineup. And if some miracle, maybe a guy named Michael. Maybe. Wouldn't that be funny?
Man, come on now. You can't end the show on that. I'm too excited now. Thank you so much. It's been fun, though. Look forward to doing it again.
All right. We'll see you all. Thank you all for watching and listening to this episode of The Kuehl Show. Goodbye.